South African President Cyril Ramaphosa and his USA counterpart Donald Trump, centering on, of course, issues that attracted global attention, some being positive and others quite negative, as to why Cyril Ramaphosa had to visit the United States of America, given the ongoing impasse, which I will call diplomatic impasse, that has been happening over the months between the United States of America and the Republic of South Africa. And today, during this program, and with a panel of experts, we are going to analyze, asking this question: if this new meeting between President Donald Trump and Cyril Ramaphosa will write a new trajectory in their diplomatic relations, and also wanting to understand if it was politically motivated or even a diplomatic move for President Ramaphosa to head to the White House to have these constructive analysis, which according to the discussion actually said that it was a successful meeting with his U.S. Counterpart, ladies and gentlemen. So we are going to uncover in the moment ahead the analysis of experts who will be joining us from South Africa and also Russia, Algeria, to have their own opinion or insight on what is happening, or probably what they can denote to the recent meeting between Cyril Ramaphosa and Donald Trump. And I will join you right after the jingle. Welcome again, ladies and gentlemen. If you are just tuning in, you are most welcome. This is Global Insight, your informative and interactive as well as knowledge sharing program, and we continue to pose these questions if actually this meeting will write a new trajectory for bilateral or diplomatic relations between the Republic of South Africa and the United States of America. We are going straight away to South Africa to meet a guest that will give us greater analysis on this subject for today. And I'm glad to introduce to you Mr. GOODNEWS CADOGAN, who is joining us from South Africa, Johannesburg. He's a Pan-African leadership coach, and I want to welcome you to this edition of Global Insight, Mr. CADOGAN.
Thank you very much, Clarisse, and greetings to you, your team, and also your viewers across the world.
Of course, you for giving importance to this rendezvous. If PASEKA PHARUMELE is there, I'll also welcome him already to the program. Hello to you, PASEKA, to know that he is an academia and also a member of the Convention for Pan-Africanism and Progress.
Thank you very much, Clarisse. Thank you for inviting me to this discussion. I'm looking forward to discussing and engaging with the rest of my panel. Thank you very much.
It is very much imperative, and I'm very happy that I could have people from South Africa to bring some practical analysis as you're living the situation in South Africa. Let's go now to Algeria to welcome Professor LAEED ZAGHLAMI, Faculty of Communications and Information at ALGERS University. Hello to you, Professor LAEED. Okay, he will be joining us subsequently. I think it's time for us to take our next stop to Moscow. We are being joined by Julia Berg, who is a political scientist and also a founder of GLOBUS Expert Club. Thank you for tuning in this day, dear Julia. Okay, while waiting to have them all in, Yulia, please, you are muted. Please, can you unmute your mic, please?
Hello?
Okay, I can hear you now.
Good afternoon.
Looking forward to having a constructive and a fruitful discussion with you all, ladies and gentlemen. Before diving into the analysis from our experts, let's listen to probably an excerpt of President Cyril Ramaphosa in a press briefing after meeting with his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump, and of course highlighting some of the reasons why he had to indulge in this meeting or travel to the United States of America.
But they also revolved around issues of trade and investment. And we were able to, in discussing all that, one, to confirm that there will continue to be engagement between South Africa and the United States officials, particularly the trade and industry level, to deal with the package of issues that we had tabled that have to do with trade and investment. And if you like, Minister Dow will be able to outline some of those that are now being given serious consideration by the United States. So I was rather pleased that there's a firm agreement and undertaking that we are going to continue engaging. So there's no disengagement. For us, that was one of the key outcomes that we had wanted. Our objective in coming here was to reset relations between the two countries and to reposition our relations, which had become contaminated by some of the issues that had been raised during the engagement, or what many people thought was also contaminating relations, for instance, the ICJ case and Ukraine, Russia, and all that. And it turned out that, yes, President Trump's concern is about the safety of people in South Africa, much as he zeroed it down to, say, white farmers. We kept saying there is a security problem, and we're not running away from that. There's criminality, and we even sought to deal with it from its genesis, that in the end, when the economy is not growing, when there's poverty, when there's unemployment, one of the social ills that we get as a derivative is criminality that spreads itself around the country. It's not only on farms or rural areas, it's even in urban areas. So he expressed his views about that, and I was rather pleased that quite a number of our compatriots were able to deal with that, including Minister Steenhuisen and President of COSATU as well. So in the discussions over lunch, we didn't dwell on that issue, it having been dealt with more thoroughly during the engagement in the Oval Office. However, they did ask, what help do you need? And we said, well, already in South Africa, we're utilizing some technology in one of the areas in our country, which we would like to see if we can be utilized. But the main thing we said in terms of assistance and help is investments. And we harped on that we require more investments from the United States, and we require a more positive disposition from the United States, because once the United States government and the president emits a very positive disposition towards South Africa, it unlocks a lot of investment, and investors would then be willing to come and invest their money. We want foreign direct investment. We want to keep the jobs that we have that have been created by US companies, and we want more and more US companies to come and invest.
And that was the President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, highlighting some key reasons as to why they had to hold this meeting with the President of the United States of America, Donald Trump, to note that, of course, this has reignited discussions on diplomacy and even political philosophy. And we want to see the viewpoints of some analysts, pundits, who see this as a pivotal moment for strengthening ties, emphasizing South Africa's concern in the African Growth and Opportunity Act, to note that it will expire in September this year, and it was necessary for Ramaphosa to indulge in this meeting to be able to, discuss how the country can gain a competitive edge as far as the program is involved. It also highlighted some concerns of South Africa's foreign policy. Can we now talk of a balanced foreign policy in South Africa, the G20 situation, and other aspects that we heard in the discussion? Now let's right off with the analysis with you, Good News CADOGAN. We have listened to an excerpt of Cyril Ramaphosa and some of the points which we highlighted in the preamble. Can we now give greater value to the state visit of Cyril Ramaphosa, given that he is the first African leader to have visited Donald Trump since he took office in January 2025?
It was a great visit from where I sit. The reason I'm saying so is that President Ramaphosa sort of stayed back and refused to engage President Trump where he was at. With all of the misinformation and disinformation that was presented to him, he remained unfazed. He remained focused on what he went there to do, to actually improve trade relations, to improve diplomatic relations, and to a certain extent spend less time trying to debunk the myths and the misinformation and the disinformation from President Donald Trump. And instead, he brought in allies, South Africans, who were actually able to debunk some of the myths. He brought in people who were coming from the same kind of lifestyle that President Trump has enjoyed, meaning that some of them, like at least one person, a rich billionaire, 3 golfers, and also a union leader who really, as a woman, managed to sketch a picture of what it feels like to be in South Africa, irrespective of whether one was black or white. And the fact that women are actually suffering the most at the hands of crime, and there is no genocide that white people in South Africa are exposed to. So I can say, in summary, the rhetoric and the diplomacy that was presented to President Ramaphosa, by the American government via their President Trump, it's sort of the beauty thereof will be seen in the behind-the-scenes results. Absolutely. In terms of what they discussed afterwards. Yeah, I think that's where we can say whether it was effective, the misinformation and the disinformation from the President Trump and his team, yeah, and whether South Africa has got its aims sort of met behind the scenes. Yeah, that's it for now.
Of course, Mr. CADOGAN, and that brings us again to that bone of contention to try to understand the global narratives and how you know, diplomacy, political rhetorics come to play at a time of global shift at every level, especially as far as international cooperation or relations is concerned. In the same perspective with you, Mr. PASEKA PHARUMELE, do you actually share this view that this visit was necessary given the points highlighted, especially as far as foreign direct investment is concerned by Cyril Ramaphosa? Is it necessary? Can South Africa not maybe engage with other partners that will still see this foreign direct investment and boost even the economy and make it more buoyant than what we see thus day?
Thank you, Clarisse. I am in a way very agreeable to what Brother Good News just said, primarily because you need to strengthen all your rapports as much as you can in order to reposition yourself in the world right now. Specifically, you need to make sure that you have as many allies as possible, because the global relationships and rapports between nations have been changing since Donald Trump took over from Biden. The lines have been blurred so much that you do not necessarily have black and white anymore, but you have this gray area where people you would normally have said are your enemies are now your friends. Absolutely. Or they are more aligned to your discourse. So it is essential to make sure that you do not burn any bridges right now, so you are able to maintain some kind of relationships, even though it is not simple. It is very difficult for you to engage someone who, for me, seems quite demented and continuously gets lost in discourse. Whenever afforded the opportunity to engage, he seems to not necessarily know where exactly we are in the discussion. And he is someone who is very set in his ways. So there is a trick in playing diplomacy, but also setting your position and making sure that people understand where you are coming from. Because if you do not do that now, what you are going to do is you are going to be agreeable to everything that this man who seems set in his ways wants. And you are now going to be forced into a position that is going to require you to neglect all those allies that you might have been able to work with over the last few years. So it is the reason why I'm saying that I am somewhat agreeable to what Brother Good News just said. It's primarily because of that. But also, on the other hand, as a Pan-Africanist, as someone who has been problematizing the West for a very long time and who wants to be very radical in their approach, I myself continue to say, but why is it that a sovereign state has to go to an overseas state to explain itself, especially when you know that that state has an ulterior motive, which is something that I believe we'll be discussing later, specifically this specific case that we have been engaging over the last few days. We will speak about it in detail, specifically from where it comes from and how it finds itself, where it finds itself today. But it is very difficult for me to say, as a respectable African man who is grounded in Africa, why is it that I have to see my president having to go be reprimanded by a demented old man who clearly has his own agendas? Because we know that now it is not about governance, it is not about diplomacy, but it has become a TV show, as we've seen with multiple other presidents, those who are agreeable and those who are not agreeable with the president of the United States. So I am in two ways. I'm not necessarily agreeing with what Brother Good News just said, but I am also somewhat saying there is a different side of me that has a very big problem with why we have to go account to a people that we know have ulterior motives for pushing the narratives that they are pushing on the global stage. Thank you, Clarisse.
I think you just said something which I want us to belabor, Mr. PASEKA FARUMELE, highlighting some of the rhetorics of President Donald Trump, because when you look at the physical meeting, you saw, like you just highlighted, that he avoided talking on very pertinent points regarding the issue of probably the stance by South Africa regarding the Middle East crisis. I'm talking about the case at the ICJ. We're also looking at South Africa's involvement in seeing that the Russia-Ukraine crisis solved and other aspects. Now we know that there is a new, impetus in around the global world, trying to probably move from a unipolar to a multipolar world, and wanting to put an end to the United States hegemony at every level. So now with South Africa's current, geopolitical alignment with countries like Russia and China, and I think this has left the United States wanting. Can this now explain this hard stance by the United States of America under Donald Trump towards South Africa in recent times? And is this meeting, the meeting that we just saw, was it a way forward towards solving a largely diplomatic stalemate, and also probably shaking South Africa's geopolitical standing in present day society?
Yes, thank you, Clarisse. Yeah, you are correct. You are very much correct. I've been arguing for the last few months that South Africa's position and why Trump decided to target South Africa is as a result of three things. The main thing, which is the primary thing, is South Africa's case in the ICJ against Israel. That is the primary thing, because Israel is continuing to kill people in mass, kill children, women, and men who are innocent, who are not involved in any form of warfare. So they are committing crimes against humanity currently as we speak in Palestine. So South Africa, being a small country, we know that it's not a small country, but in a geopolitical position, it is doing something which was never seen before in history, where a smaller country is taking a country that is seen as a nuclear superpower to the ICJ. And in itself, there's an entire political discourse about who goes to the ICJ and who's held accountable by the ICC, because it has clearly seemed like the people who are held accountable are those who are from Africa, and everyone else is immune to their crimes being called out. That was the first one, right? The case with the ICJ. The second one, which I think is very important, is the relationships that Donald Trump has built with South Africans currently living in the USA and other countries closer to the USA, like Canada. And that is the PayPal mafia, guys like Peter Thiel and Elon Musk and etc. Those are apartheid beneficiaries, and they are those people who are reminiscent of the apartheid government in South Africa coming back, and they feel as though the government that there's no black government that should be responsible for the lives of so many white people. So those people feel as though it is absolutely absurd for a black government to actually function where you have such a big number of white people. Like I said, they have nostalgia about apartheid. And the third one is this narrative of the genocide. So the genocide, if people do remember, if people do understand, Donald Trump didn't just start with the genocide. Now, in 2018, if I'm not mistaken, he tweeted and he indicated that South African white farmers are being attacked. And there is a primary reason why this is something that has never left his mind. Donald Trump is within circles of white superiority groups that are on the right wing, extreme right wing, him and the likes of Elon Musk. Even though we see them more and more since Elon Musk purchasing Twitter, now called X, even though we are seeing them more and more in the mainstream where they're able to be proud about their white superiority, Donald Trump is being fed by such people, and such groups continuously exist in the context of South Africa. They exist here where we are, where you have these groups that have international relationships with people who are close to power, specifically Donald Trump in this context. So back then he was already speaking about this, and as soon as he came in and he came back in, all these three factors came into play. He initially started by saying that there are really bad things that are happening in South Africa. There we knew that he was going to raise it, but obviously he was told you can't say white genocide, because white genocide would mean that you need to prove that people are being killed at an extraordinary rate as compared to others in a specific context. So you see that was very key, where you could see he's being guided, but he's Donald Trump. As I continuously say, that he is Donald Trump. He's going to do what he believes is matters to him. It doesn't matter if it is undiplomatic, if it is unleader-esque. It's not something that a leader would do, you know. It doesn't matter to him. He is going to do what he believes at that point in time. So those three things are what is guiding us here. Sorry for going for too long. Sorry, Clarisse. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Of course, we're going to come subsequently to you, PASEKA, as we continue to analyze a topic for discussion with you, Mr. Good News CADOGAN, trying to understand how probably politics, diplomacy happens, and we are now seeing some of Trump's tactics, which according to popular opinion did not work with the president of South Africa. From the physical meeting between the two leaders, we could see Trump in what I can term some sort of rhetorical or political intimidation that was intended to derail President Ramaphosa from his agenda or real agenda that he took to the United States of America with other officials from the coalition government, noting that the Minister of Agriculture was present. Now, this clearly did not succeed with Ramaphosa, as was the case with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky some months back. So what can we make of this as per Ramaphosa's understanding of probably political rhetorics or international diplomacy in trying to gain a competitive edge in the spheres of global politics?
Wow, I think President Ramaphosa brought in a sense of calmness into that room in the White House. He came in there unperturbed. He came in there unrushed. He came in there from a level of from a position of peace and understanding. What is happening in America now started probably about 30 years ago, or just over 30 years ago. There was a book that was written. The title of the book is When Corporations Rule the World. And at that point, David Corton was warning the world against the rise of the corporations. And later on his exit, President Biden said the following: "Today, an oligarchy is taking shape in America of extreme wealth, power, and influence that literally threatens our entire democracy, our basic rights and freedoms, and a fair shot for everyone to get ahead. We see the consequences all across America." So when President Ramaphosa stepped into the room, he knew exactly what was going on. He knew that some of the state institutions in America that are bolstering democracy have been attacked already. So the rules of the game are no longer diplomatic right now. That's why you find that President Trump was using underhand methods and classic narcissistic behavior of trying to blackmail the opponent that he's negotiating with to submit simply because they feel shame or guilt for something which they have not done. And in this case, something that we are not guilty of as a nation. And President Ramaphosa, representing South Africa, knew that he did not have to respond to each and every allegation. That's the difference between him and President Zelensky. President Zelensky tried to reason with the unreasonable. He tried to disprove the myth of the other side in narcissistic Donald Trump, who knew where he was sitting, that what he was doing was to just stir the opponent, get them to be internally dysregulated so that he's not able to get what he came in to get. Okay. President Ramaphosa knew what he wanted, and he stuck to the agenda. That's the difference.
Indeed, that's the difference, and it shows how far Africa has gone in understanding the narratives of international relations, global politics, and this gives again an added advantage or edge to African politicians on how they can define their on space in global issues at a time of, you know, a practical wind of change blowing across. We can see all over from Burkina Faso and other countries that wanting to define its sovereignty at every level. Just to remind you, ladies and gentlemen, that you're onto your program Global Insider, proposed to you by GLOBUS and the Pan-African Media Television, and we seek to bring greater insight into the major topics affecting not just the African continent, but the global world at large, wanting to bring to the fore how the new world order is and how the African continent particularly and other countries can capitalize on to make the world a better place. That we always say that it is an interconnected entity, and of course it is very difficult to work in silence. And we continue to analyze constructively, understanding how all of these will work. I don't know if Julia Burke is back with us. We'll go to her now to get this view, bringing to the fore the aspects of misinformation and disinformation that was clearly saw when President Donald Trump was very categorical about the fact that white farmers or white landowners are being killed in South Africa to probably take their lands. So let's now, with Julia, understand again the concepts of disinformation and misinformation and how this play in the new world, and how we can work to avert some of the negative consequences attached to such philosophies. Hello, Julia. I think you can answer the question if Julia is not available, Mr. Good News, CADOGAN.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't get the question. Will you please repeat it?
Yeah, in your probably preamble, you were talking about aspects of disinformation and misinformation, which is something I want us to dwell again on, because it is actually occupying the media landscape and everywhere across the world during this very practical, dynamic global changes. So we want to see, you highlighted, we saw these ideologies well presented in the public discourse that we happened between Cyril Ramaphosa and Donald Trump, where Trump was very categorical that you know, there is a genocide happening in South Africa, and of course it actually attracted some you know, maybe opinion of other people who said, how can you be criticizing genocide in South Africa, which is not even happening, whereas you're supporting Israel in its position and, of course, the genocide against Palestinians. So the goal is to understand disinformation and misinformation and ways towards solving this to mitigate the negative effect as the world continues to evolve in all its sphere.
I think if we take it further, this misinformation and disinformation is also can be described as intelligence and counterintelligence. And those countries that are incapable of disproving, not in a reactive manner, but in a proactive way, the spread of this false information, fake news, driven by, those oligarchs that I was talking about earlier on, most of them that are seeking to take over the world, they're involved in technology companies. And technology companies are used as tools and infrastructure for communication. And it has been proven with Grok, which is an AI tool attached to X, which is Twitter that my brother was talking about. And they even change the algorithms that actually respond or help the artificial intelligence to respond to issues of genocide, what's happening in South Africa, and all sorts of other things. So misinformation is not only driven by human interaction and communication, it's also automated to such an extent that you can't even trust a video that you see on YouTube. I could just be a hologram, even myself, as I speak now, and you wouldn't know the difference because it would take my voice and say things which I didn't say, and they would be attributable to me. So it is important for governments in Africa and elsewhere. And because we are focusing on Africa here and South Africa, it is important to be vigilant. It is important to be able to analyze information that comes through, both as individuals and as governments, so that we can be able to sort out the wheat from the chaff. And in the end, one last point, it's not about disproving each and every lie in every engagement with someone that you know is hell-bent on producing misinformation, producing disinformation, so that in the end, they can affect the essence of what is going on in the moment. So it's very much important to separate what is the context of the conversation that you are having with another, so that in the end, it is not influenced by disinformation. And we've seen this in action when President Ramaphosa did it very well in his interaction with President Trump. And he was not swayed to actually deal with that disinformation. Even the expression on his face, the kind of disbelief and the kind of dismissive posture that he adopted to prove that he did not believe a word of what was being written there. He didn't have to actually have been, as many people would like to believe. The intelligence services in South Africa didn't have to preempt and know that that information would be thrown at him. He didn't go there to disprove what he knows is incorrect and is misinformation. He went there to improve trade relations. He went there to improve diplomatic relations. And he went there to actually make sure that we are on the same page on issues like AGOA, and also our ability to drive economic development for our people, and to ensure that if Donald Trump wants to bring Starlink to South Africa, he's got to come in and conform to our local rules, so that in the end, we do not have to suffer a colonization of a special kind, now done not by a country to another, but done by an oligarch to another country, so that they take control of the economy of that country on their own terms. If he wants to bring Starlink to South Africa or to the continent, he has to conform to local rules, or he can take it elsewhere.
Of course, respecting the local rules, even in diplomatic or bilateral engagement. Welcome again. If you are just tuning in, this is Global Insight, your informative and knowledge sharing program, and we are presently analyzing constructively the meeting that happened between Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa and his U.S. counterpart, who has become very embattled in present the politics with his policies, and of course talking about the diplomatic dynamics. I'm coming back to you, PASEKA PHARUMELE. Let's look at the AGOA. Do you think at the end this probably the agenda proposed by Cyril Ramaphosa, because he quite mentioned that there is need for U.S. Businessmen or investors to stay in South Africa, and of course highlighting the AGOA, which we know is about to expire in September 2025, and probably the world is waiting to see the next move that Donald Trump will take regarding this of course project. Can we, to an extent, say that this actually appealed, given that the public discourse showed a president that was intentional about discussing issues of mutual concern, and another president that was probably downplaying and bringing again to the fore, just like you and GOODNEWS CADOGAN noted already, his political or rhetorical intimidation to continue to maybe occupy the media landscape. Is there hope for South Africa to remain under the AGOA agreement after this visit?
Yeah, I think with this visit, we are going to find ourselves in a position where the agreement is extended. The agreement is extended. The reason that I argue that is because, as you could see in that room, there were several people who are very strategic and who have different kinds of rapports and relationships with Donald Trump, who I think he believes and he listens to. Specifically, a man such as Rupert, who was able to disarm him by using his socialization capabilities of disarming a man before you are able to tell them your reality. Because if you look at that panel that was organized specifically by South Africa, and that which spoke that Trump wanted to listen to, Rupert is the one who was very straight and who was very factual in what is the reality of South Africa. And because of that, I think that has swayed what Trump sees and what Trump wants in terms of AGOA specifically. But now we find ourselves in a very peculiar position, because a strategic country would not re-establish a relationship with a country that has clearly shown itself to be a power-hungry and not so well listening country. So a strategic country would be strengthening its relationships with its other allies and friends, so that they can be able to establish a similar rapport and relationship with those allies and friends. That's a strategic country. So for me, South Africa, specifically under the presidency of Ramaphosa, finds itself in a very peculiar position where you do not have the ability to strategically position yourself, so that when a country such as America tries to interfere in your own sovereignty, you are able to stand for yourself, and after standing for yourself, to remove yourself from that relationship. I do not think we have those capabilities, and that is why we had to go back to the United States and try to re-establish and refresh our relationship, including the AGOA agreement. So that puts us in a very peculiar and a very difficult position. I want to say, look at the situation that is Russia. When Russia went into Ukraine, what happened was that they were sanctioned by the West. But Russia until today still remains. Russia was able to withstand those sanctions. Today, Russia is able to function so well without the assistance of the West. It is doing well. In actual fact, what we've come to learn is that Europe, the European West, is the one that needs Russia. They need Russian gas, especially in the winters. They are not able to, sustain themselves without the assistance of Russia. And now they cannot do those relationships that they used to have with Ukraine because of the current instability in the region. So you see, that's because Russia was able to strategically position itself in a position of power and be able to strengthen its own relationships in the continent of Africa. So what I argue is that things such as AGOA are supposed to be in the past. And I do understand one of the most important things and the fundamental things that we need to know is that AGOA does not necessarily benefit the people on the ground. Those are the black people on the ground. AGOA primarily benefits the very white people that say that they are being killed by black South Africans. That is something that is very important, because once you understand that, now you understand why bodies such as AfriForum are now fighting, saying, no, we want sanctions that are directed at specific people who are in the ANC, people in the EFF. Basically, what they're trying to do is they're trying to weaponize the United States of America. And it's not going to work like that. And that is why they still maintain that they are not going anywhere. They are not going to leave the country. And, so I will just leave it there.
No, I just wanted to interject and bring this question still to you, PASEKA. When you talk about the fact that South Africa is not playing strategic as far as going to the US is concerned, can we say that the coalition between South Africa, probably the Democratic Alliance and the ruling African National Congress is what has brought the country into this position of seeing itself probably dancing towards the East and the West at this particular moment, and why even after talking back to Donald Trump saying keep the United States of America, we're going to stay here in South Africa, we still see him going to the United States of America, lobbying for what he termed probably investment, wanting to maintain the AGOA and other aspects of probably bilateral relations with the United States of America.
Yeah, no, definitely. This the GNU is one of the trickiest things that this country has found itself in. In our political history. Why I say that, and I'm saying one of the, because we know there was apartheid and there's been a lot that happened even just after apartheid and before apartheid. But I'm saying one of the trickiest. Why do I say that? Because you have these people who on paper have different ideologies about how the country is supposed to be run, political ideologies, and who they believe needs to be the country's allies. Specifically, I'm going to give you an example. South Africa has taken Israel to the ICJ to hold them to account for what they're currently doing in Palestine and to the people of Palestine. But I might be mistaken. I think 2 months ago or something, I do not remember the exact date, you had a South African delegate with people who form a part of the GNU who went to Israel. And those people all of a sudden came back with the same statement saying that Israel is not an apartheid state. That means basically what is happening here is that the government of South Africa has come out to say that Israel is not an apartheid state. Do you see what is the problem with this situation that we are faced with? Absolutely. You have a situation where you have people with different ideologies within the same, who become a government who are supposed to agree with each other and present a united front, who have to fight each other within the very government, because you have gone in a very hotly debated matter and you have positioned South Africa in a very tricky position. Why? Because you form now a part of the government. If you are in the opposition, it was going to be okay. But now it means that there's leaks, there is cracks inside this very GNU. even though they might not come out publicly. We saw that they did it with the Bella Act, where you could clearly see these divides, that these people are not united in this GNU. They are very
Absolutely.
much removed from each other. So you see, the GNU in itself is the reason why we find ourselves in this position. But you cannot, and I cannot, none of us can blame the people of South Africa for this GNU. We can only hold one group into account, and that is the ANC. The only reason that the ANC is finding itself in a position where it has to negotiate power with a party that we know has a historical cases of being very racist and very segregative. The reason why they find themselves having to go to bed with these people is because they have failed black people of this country. That is why until this day, the black people, the black majority of this country remain the poorest of the lot. The black people of this country remain very hungry, and they remain unemployed. We have every year we have a problem with electricity. It is okay, it seems to be working now, but if you go to the townships, if you go to the villages, we are privileged, where myself and guys like Good News, we're privileged because these things seem to be functioning. But there is one group of people actually who have to be held to account, and that is the ANC. If it was not for them failing the people of this country, they wouldn't find themselves having to go to bed with parties like the DA.
Okay.
So that is very key. Thank you, Clarisse.
All right, thank you for that, PASEKA. And we continue to analyze, give in-depth analysis with you now, Mr. Good News CADOGAN. When we want to understand what have already been said by yourself and PASEKA, we want to now understand South Africa's standing under the coalition government and how it is affecting the country's international standing. Let's now take us to this aspect of probably diplomatic dynamics, still probably bringing it closer to the recent meeting between Ramaphosa and Donald Trump. In what ways, sir, can Ramaphosa's recent meeting and maybe his calm and diplomatic approach during the physical meeting, in what way did this influence the country's future interactions with the U.S. administration, particularly under the leadership of Donald Trump?
I think the way in which President Ramaphosa conducted the conversation, at least the part thereof that was in public, actually positioned him as a statesman, I believe. And there is one thing that was a win in the open space. The fact that President Donald Trump is going to come to South Africa to close off as part of the G20 participation. And this is something that he categorically denied that he was going to be part of. So basically, the United States boycotted G20 because it is hosted in South Africa. So by getting him to agree to come, it means other things will come also. There is hope for the extension of the AGOA. There is hope that the tariffs will not be there, because there is a kind of a reciprocity, especially in the mineral sector and also in the automotive sector. There is a reciprocal relationship between America and South Africa. The fact that we manufacture and assemble and put together products for them in the automotive sector, it's not out of the goodness of the heart of the American government. It is because we have got lower manufacturing costs and we can provide those products to them in a cost-effective way. So that is a plus for them. We have got natural resources that America needs that doesn't have. And if we are going to grow exponentially our economy in South Africa, it means that President Ramaphosa has to actually drive for the downstream economy to be developed so that we can start making products that can be used by the end users rather than taking raw materials such as agri-products and also minerals out of the earth as they are and exporting them to America and to other countries, whether they be China or Russia. The effect is the same. It doesn't matter who you export to. It's how you export, what you export, and what of what value, and whether you have added value before you export the product to the other country. So that is the challenge that President Ramaphosa is going to have with his government, to drive for beneficiation and to ensure that no raw materials get exported to the United States, and get America to accept this under Donald Trump's administration and beyond. So this is not just an administration by administration kind of diplomacy. It's got to be long-term. It's got to achieve two milestones for South Africa. One is to ensure that our 2030 goals as part of the National Development Program for 2030 are met. It's also tied to the Agenda 2063 from an African continent point of view, to ensure that the Agenda 2063 for South Africa and contribution thereto is achieved through very good relations diplomatically and also trade-wise. That's what I would say are the challenges facing President President Ramaphosa and future governments in South Africa.
Okay, and let me stay with you, Mr. Cadogan. If I understood your point, you highlighted that whatever relation is happening between South Africa and the United States, it benefits also the United States, of course. Now let's look at the fact, because when Ramaphosa was talking during the press briefing, he highlighted the need that the U.S. is constantly in need of the rare earth metals and other raw materials in its country. Now, being conversant of such, why would probably South African president go towards the White House, knowing that the White House or the United States needs South Africa more? Can we again bring back the question that we earlier directed to PASEKA, that the coalition government in South Africa has put the president in some sort of, an entrapped or a hard rock, that it is difficult to strategically position South Africa in terms of international decision making that has to do with probably international relations and other aspects that have direct or indirect implication in the economy of South Africa?
Yes, the government of national unity is making it difficult for the ANC as a party to govern, because with all its limitations, all right, I'm not saying the ANC is an angelic party that is achieving all of its objectives insofar as the needs of the electorate or South Africans. But if we were to position all the parties on a continuum, and on the last end of that continuum would be the Constitution, the ANC is closest to the ideals of our Constitution as a country. Yes, there is corruption ravaging it. Yes, there's fraud ravaging it. Yes, there's sometimes incompetence ravaging it. But insofar as the values of the ANC are concerned, they are the closest to the Constitution. Other parties, they pay lip service to our Constitution, and parties like the DA, which is a large party within the government of national unity, it still reminisces about the past. It still would love to focus on the needs of the white minority. Not necessarily just the white minority, but is very much close to what I would refer to as whiteness. Because I don't believe that the electorate that supports the DA is actually supporting most of the whiteness qualities of the politics of the DA. The DA would love to reverse what is widely known across the world as affirmative action. And it's a very funny position, because affirmative action is usually a policy to protect minorities in different democracies. But in South Africa, it is a policy to protect the majority of the people in the country. So we are in an unenviable position in the world, where you've got a political party and a president who has to deliver jobs to the majority of the people that remain unemployed, as PASEKA was saying. So in the end, you have got also globally countries that are hell-bent on seeking to receive raw materials as exports from South Africa, which is not working well in terms of job creation. We will never create jobs that are needed for the young people in South Africa if we continue to export raw materials. And we will never reach a double-digit growth in South Africa if we continue to export raw materials. It is important for us as a country to have an economic policy that is going to drive a double-digit growth, an economy that is going to ensure that we collaborate with our partners in the SADC region, in the East and West Africa region and North Africa, to make sure that we create centers of excellence for manufacturing and production of end-user products that can contribute to the various industries across the world, so that we become the go-to producers of these goods that are needed globally, but also, on the other hand, not export the rare earth metals to the rest of the world. I would say, if President Ramaphosa could influence and grow what was started under President Thabo Mbeki, the growth of the support for the Africa peer review mechanism that would create stability on the continent, so that intra-Africa trade can grow without hindrance, because we will then be able to vouch for the level of governance across each and every country on the continent. And also we would be able to reduce and silence guns on the continent, so that the economy can flow through, and there's no need for the migration from the rest of the continent into South Africa. So when we then are a global bloc, economic bloc that is able to trade with the world as a bloc of 1 billion people, we will not be found wanting. We will actually liberate ourselves from the resource curse, so that we turn resource curses into resource blessings and be the kind of powerful continent that we are supposed to be, because we have got minerals and other resources out of the earth that can support the economic needs of all 1 billion people on the continent.
To act strategically to gain that competitive edge to meet the objectives you just highlighted. Mr. CADOGAN, just to note that, ladies and gentlemen, we're almost culminating, but we still have some few minutes to talk still on very important aspect as to analyzing the meeting. A lot of people, media organs have discussed and brought forth diverse analysis to the meetings, and we continue to give it from a different perspective. And now let's look at the balance of interest in the meeting that was held on the 21st of May 2025 with you, PASEKA. Can we see that there was some sort of a compromise as far as the balance of interest is concerned? We know that Ramaphosa was having a clear agenda, economic agenda, and also the dynamic of indirectly inviting Donald Trump to be part of the G20 summit. And on the other hand, we saw that Donald Trump focused more on an elusive genocide, targeting white farmers or landowners in South Africa. can we say that during the maybe behind the scene discussion which Ramaphosa, your president, held as largely successful, there was some sort of a compromise as to, you know, the aspect of balance of interest, and we are anticipating in the months or weeks ahead to see already the decisions which are coming as a result of this meeting between the two head of states.
Yeah, Clarisse, thank you for that. You know, the tricky thing is that in this situation, we know that there is more than one thing that is at play, right? And something has to be given. And Trump, what he has done is that he has decided to weaponize the power of money, specifically aid, that he has in his country, not specifically in his government, but the country, because things like AGOA, things like US aid, and etc. There are AIDS programs the world over. There are HIV and AIDS programs the world over. Money that goes into research for cancer medication and etc. He has decided to go and weaponize that against everyone, not just us, but against everyone. But the problem is that he doesn't understand. He has a lack of comprehension that not everyone is overly dependent on the USA for their survival. And that is why we saw what happened between them and China, the so-called trade war that happened between them and China, because he assumed that China wouldn't be able to function without them. He tried to do the same thing in Europe, and that is why we saw Stammer going to him and doing exactly what everyone knows. When you are dealing with a baby, you have to treat them like a baby. You have to smile, you have to brush their ego, you have to, you have to be very diplomatic, but in a more parently way, if there's a way to put it. But you have to be getting there. You are not going to fight with the person because you know what is going to happen. So you need to be very strategic. If anything, the people who've become very dependent on the United States are the NATO countries and the EU itself. And he knows this, and that is why he is playing his hand so hard and so heavy. So now, that means that there are things that need to be compromised in order for you to deal with them. We saw what happened in his recent visit to the Middle East, where Saudi Arabia had to gift him something, where Qatar had to gift him something. We saw these. And in all honesty, a lot of these things are called bribes in reality. But because we are at a point where we cannot distinguish between what is fact and what is right and what is disinformation, what is misinformation, we are now in a point where we don't know what is what. So you are able to say a person being gifted a plane is not being bribed. A person who's being promised lots of oil is not being bribed, because there's some way that they've been able to distort reality for the rest of us. Things that seemed to be common knowledge that they are problematic, they are not anymore. And that is why we have this case of genocide in South Africa, where they're saying to us, but this is happening. And we know it's not happening. We can provide the statistics that it's not happening. We can do everything we can, So the facts get removed from the conversation, basically. So whatever a person says, the reality that they present needs to be either agreed with, because if you disagree with it, you get into a fight position. Now you have to fight with a man who is very powerful, but with a lack of knowledge of the realities of the world. Or even if he knows what is happening with the rest of the world, he takes a sober decision to say, I will not listen to them. I've made up my mind, and it ends there. And that is very problematic, and that is very challenging. That is very difficult. So with that being said, coming back to your compromises that you mentioned, specifically for South Africa has a lot to lose. They have a lot that they can compromise on, that we know the USA wants us to compromise on. The first one, it's obviously the case in the ICJ. That is very important for them. They know that is very important for them because of their relationship. As they always say, their closest ally in the Middle East. they need to protect Israel, and we know that Israel has some kind of control over the United States through its I don't know what body, APEC, I would like to believe. Somehow they're able to control how independent bodies are supposed to react to what is happening around the world. So we know through APEC that they have control over them, and we see it. We are not idiots, and we're coming back to that point of reality. What is actually reality? Because we're starting to question it. So because of that, that is going to be the first case where South Africa needs to drop its case in the ICJ. But that is very complex, and we know if South Africa drops it, Ireland will pick it up. You know, China can pick it up, but we know China is not invested in that. But there are those who can pick it up. And South Africa knows that it cannot just drop this case, because it is a very important case for South Africa, not just for us, but for the people of Palestine, who we've promised that we will not drop you no matter what. And the second case being Starlink. Starlink is very important. And I like the fact that Brother Good News touched on how AI is being manipulated. AI was supposed to be artificial intelligence, which was independent of anyone's manipulation. But we now know that it can be manipulated, even though it will show that it is being manipulated. And then now you find yourself where Elon Musk was able to weaponize Starlink in Ukraine and say, if you do not give in to these demands, I'm going to shut off your internet that I've been providing to you since the war began with Russia. So now, how do you not know? How do you know actually that Starlink coming to South Africa is going to be something that is not going to be a security threat? We need to be careful with that. We need to make sure that as much as we have our own problems, we do not add on them. When we are watching, we do not put ourselves in that position. So that is another compromise that we can make by allowing Starlink to get access into South Africa without complying to our BBEE requirements, because that is something that is very important for us, where we say if you're an international company, you need to have local part ownership of whatever product that you are selling. You need to have about 30% of it being owned by a black co-company within the context of South Africa. And when we say black, it's not necessarily those of African descent. You have Asian, you have what we call colored, and etc. So that's another compromise. The USA has nothing to compromise. The USA has nothing to compromise, because they know that they have power and they want to use their power. And we see them using their power to bring countries to the USA to account for their own sovereignty. So basically, the USA can get into any country it wants, and it can make demands, and you have to comply. So they don't have anything to lose. All they would do is that they would give you back that aid. Thank you, Clarisse.
Much, PASEKA PHARUMELE, for that in-depth analysis. And this brings us now to the question, because when you look at problematic, does the Trump-Ramaphosa meeting a new diplomatic era? I want us now to answer this question, Mr. CADOGAN. From all that you have said and all that Mr. PASEKA has also said pertaining the recent meeting between Ramaphosa and Donald Trump, can we say that a clear diplomatic trajectory has been defined? Or on the other hand, can we say that we still have, you know, an unclear diplomatic era for the two countries? And what specifically are those long-term strategies that the Republic of South Africa can employ together with other countries in the African continent to ensure that there are no compromises at a very strategic or diplomatic level?
It's a very big challenge for both countries, because the Americans are sitting on the far end of the continuum that seeks total control of the world.
Sure.
And South Africa is sitting on the other end, where we are trying to make sure that the world order and our ability to shape it is such that it doesn't go against our constitutional foundations. So that is the key here. So where South Africa can contribute, or rather can compromise, its short-term to medium-term goals will have to be compromised for the long term. To retain AGOA, there may be certain things that we have to give to America in the short term, meaning that we don't go for a total drive towards beneficiation, but beneficiation becomes a phased strategy that lasts for a longer period than we would otherwise have wanted. So it means we give those rare earth metals to America for a limited period of time, whilst we are lobbying to create these centers of excellence across the continent so that in the end, we may be able to manufacture and produce the end user products that come out of these rare earth minerals and other minerals like gold, silver, diamond. All of these, we find a way, like chrome as well is in that mix, all the platinum group metals. We create a long-term strategy that says we seek to be able to manufacture our own products. In the end, we will then be able to grow our economy so that the young people may be able to find the jobs that they need so that they can be able to sustain themselves economically. On the other hand, America wants to drive and protect the narrow interest of minorities. It's not like it's the good interest. It's a narrow interest of minorities. And we, on the other hand, will not give up the constitutional democracy that we created in the last 30 years. So there is more of an impasse. It's not going to happen because the very same minorities that want their narrow interest to be met are currently protected against the current provisions of our constitution. The oligarchy influence, the winner-takes-all kind of drive by the likes of Elon Musk, it must be met with the very same contempt that it deserves. There should be no compromise there on Starlink coming into South Africa without local investment and also local ownership. And then also, it's not just the BEE that is a challenge for Starlink. It's about it opening up itself to the regulation of an organization like ICASA, for example, to make sure that spy technology and all sorts of other things do not get into our country and compromise. Because whatever is compromised in South Africa compromises the rest of the continent. And then you have got AGOA, I think is covered by the small little compromises we can make. Insofar as Israel is concerned and its alliance with America, there's nothing we can give there, unfortunately. International justice must take its course, and the people of Palestine must get what they deserve in terms of the two-state solution. In fact, if it was up to me personally, a single-state solution would be the one to go for. And we have to ensure, as South Africa, that on the question of trade and downstream manufacture of end-user products is something that should be within our sight and within this generation. That will prevent a situation whereby the far left and the narrow economic goals that do not take these other limitations into account become the main. Because narrow nationalism, as has been stated and shown by, I just forget his name now, one of the American politicians and economists, he spoke about this narrow nationalism and how it can actually be a burden rather than an asset to a nation.
All right.
We are part of a global economy, and if we cannot function within that global economy, we will be an island that will be isolated. No one will want even our beneficiated products if we are not to play in this. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Cadogan, to say that, of course, the coming months or days will tell us if actually there is a clear diplomatic trajectory for South Africa and the United States of America, and why not between Africa and the United States of America under the administration of President Donald Trump. If we are ready to have all of the points which you and PASEKA highlighted, there is need, of course, for us, especially African politicians, to continue to understand, you know, how international politics work, to be able to really define its own scope, and of course make its stance on matters that issues that actually are of global concern, as you highlighted. Compromising on the ICJ case, it's about probably closing the eyes to the injustices on the vulnerable people in the Middle East, in the Palestine. And I want to thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for actually staying with us on this edition of Global Inside, which has been presented to you by GLOBUS and the Pan-African Media Television. And today we focused on the recent meeting between the president of the Rainbow Nation, Cyril Ramaphosa, and embattled Donald Trump, and still waiting to see how successful this meeting was as defined by the South African leader. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for the in-depth analysis on our topic for discussion this day. And I think it will go a long way to continue to change narratives, not only in Africa, but across the global world, bringing Africa to the fore and giving it the position that it deserves, without forgetting, let's appreciate, of course, the technical crew for ensuring that this program was a success. And we are going to see you subsequently for more interesting and interactive and knowledge-sharing episodes of your informative program. Thank you and have a blessed weekend.
Thank you very much.